Straw Hut Media.
There's a closet in Oliver's front hall. There are 5 doors, or 7 doors, or 12 doors, or however many doors there were. And there's a tiny little closet door here. I'm like, of course, this is where all the dogs' costumes and leashes and bags go. So there's like a Three Amigos dog costume. There's like a Wild and Crazy Guy dog costume, and there's an arrow through the head costume for a dog scale. So there's a whole closet full of Steve and Marty's old shows in dog form.
A doggy dress-up
yes,
room?
A dog dress-up room that never was seen, and everyone sort of giggled about it. And I'm like, yeah, it's there. If you want to open the door, you can open it.
Welcome to another very special bonus episode of Only Murders in the Pod.
The show where we look behind the scenes and mine for clues as we meet the cast and creators of the Hulu original series, Only Murders in the Building. I'm your host, Elizabeth Keener.
And I'm your host, Kevin Lon. And today on the show, producer Maggie Boles is back. Hi, Maggie.
Yay, hi.
She recently sat down with Curt Beech and Rich Murray.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, am I here?
Yes, I talked to Curt and Rich. I really wanted to know how much more I could get to know the characters by looking at the world that they live in, which is basically built by the art department. In the production design department, there's artists, there's painters, designers, carpenters, all kinds of things. And obviously a production designer and a set decorator.
My name's Curt Beech. I'm the production designer of season 1 of Only Murders in the Building.
And I'm Rich Murray, the set decorator for seasons 1 and 2 of Only Murders in the Building.
For the record, I wanted to do season 2, but I was working on a movie and the dates didn't line up, and it just sucks. But they're in good hands now.
Yeah.
And it's going well, but it's not like I'm not going back to Only Murders in the Building. Those yahoos, no way. It is all love. I have nothing but love for these people. It was fantastic.
So I, for one, wasn't really 100% sure what production design includes or does.
Maggie.
I know. I should know, but I don't really know. So I asked Curt for his take on what, good production design does.
Really good production design sits in the middle of a cute little Venn diagram where authenticity, story, and visual content converge. That's where you want to get.
What does that mean?
Back to school.
I know. It sounds like kind of complicated, right? So we figured we would draw a little Venn diagram and look at it. We would have 3 circles: authenticity, story, and visual content. And then right here, this little center part, that's production design.
Wow.
They all overlap there.
The
center of everything.
Did this help?
It did help, actually.
Yes, that is the
I'm a
pinnacle of
visual
life.
thinker.
And I think you can have authenticity in a space film if you're doing, science fiction. You can have story, in a romantic comedy and even in farce. And you can have visual content in any and all of the above. And comedy is a little bit more elusive. It's a little harder to pull it off. But what I'm always after is something completely authentic. It has to be believable or the audience is going to tune out immediately. So we're just trying to create spaces where the actors can do their best work and spaces that make sense for the characters and are realistic in the world that the writers have created.
And what about how production design and set decoration come together? How are they different, and how do they work together?
Well, to me, it all comes about from the same task of serving the script and serving the characters, in that the decoration is one part of the design world, but in a way it's the minutia of the design world that often is either noticed or unnoticed, or, it all depends on what the camera wants to see. So we provide a world of big splashy picture down to the minutia of grains of sand or salt or whatever. And we give that all over to the camera team and to the director. And I think that's the way I like to think of it, as being related all in one world. And it's just different branches of the different teams that pull off that vision for the designer.
Yeah, I like to say that story is built from detail. We sometimes will have a detail that we really like, and that becomes the basis of an entire room or a set. And then sometimes we'll have a set, and then we will add details to it. But all of this comes about from text and story and backstory. And everything we're doing, we're trying to imbue with a history and a backstory. And that's why this project is special, and that's why there's gold in them nar hills, because what John and the writers have created is so rich with detail that we don't have to look too far for it. And then when we want to add to it, it's very easy to find because the characters are so richly developed and described. That's the true collaboration between a showrunner, creator, and the art department.
Can I just comment on how rich and deep Rich's voice is?
He does have a great voice. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's enchanting.
Okay. Continue.
Definitely. Yeah. And Rich said that even though they have a new production designer for season 2, the rest of the team has basically stayed the same. And so they've developed a really cool, trusting relationship with John Hoffman, the showrunner.
He's so comfortable with us in terms of running with the story or running with those ideas visually, and then telling that story visually for these characters, that he often just giggles with us and says, I trust you, go with it. Go. And it's really kind of funny to have that sort of collaborative freedom in a way with a showrunner that, oftentimes doesn't happen, and certainly not this early in the relationship. It's been a really great trip.
Okay. I would like to know how, I know it's a collaboration, but how do they make all of this happen? You have the actors, you have the costumes, you have the different departments. I want to know how the costumes and the sets kind of
interact together.
Yeah. How do they make that happen?
Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about that, I feel like, with Dana last time, and she talked about, the way they interact. But what I thought was really interesting talking to Curt was that he pointed out how important the timing is in the decisions that they make, for what they're wearing and where they live and what their house looks like. So I thought that was pretty cool.
You mean the timing of episodes, or the timing of before they start? Like, is that what do you
exactly mean? The timing of,
or is he going to tell us?
The timing of when they make their choices, So, they're dressing a character, let's say they're shooting episode 3, and they haven't chosen their drapes yet in the place. So what do they choose first? What's more important? Who are they matching to? And,
that's
that kind
fascinating.
of stuff.
Let's listen to him. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, we get to a point where we have to start selecting fabrics and wall coverings and paint colors. And then Rich, while I'm thinking about the walls and the room, Rich is thinking about, what the decor is going to be, what that means to the characters. And, we get to a point where we're like, oh my gosh, if we do like a plaid sofa and she's got him in a plaid shirt, it's either going to look amazing or we're going to look like idiots. So we have to have that conversation about, we lay out a board and we're like, this is what we're thinking about. These are the colors that we really like for this character. Where are you in your process? And we just have to try and bounce off of each other and make sure that we're not conflicting too much, because it could get ugly if we miss. You know?
Oh, I would love to know. I mean, I think we'd all like to know, what does a miss look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Could it be like the cat guy, but then he has this super slick apartment because they didn't realize what he would be like?
Or the doggy stuff at the cat. The cat stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking maybe if like you had horizontal stripes on like a vertical striped sofa, maybe that would look bad.
Oh,
That would look bad.
I don't know.
That would look like a tic-tac-toe kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
With some X's and O's, throw them in there. No, that was terrible. Terrible. See, I missed. That was a miss.
That was a miss.
Hello. Okay, here we go.
Think about it in a close-up, right? Like a sofa is a pretty big thing when you have a body and a big piece of fabric. So you have to think, what is that going to be in a tighter shot, and how are those two things going to relate? And then what's right behind it, a wallpaper could be contrasting and could really mess with that dialogue between these fabrics and ideas and shapes and all this stuff. So yeah, we had a lot of conversations about how to make sure that we were both on the same page and that we're complementing each other and really expanding on the character together.
Yeah, I think, and actually, I was thinking of an instance in which it works almost in a collaboratively the opposite way or the backwards way of that, especially because of this show. We know who the characters are up front in a way. Like in the first few episodes, we sort of figured out who everybody was, but we never saw Bunny's apartment. Mm-hmm. So in that way, we knew who Bunny was based on the work that Dana had done all last season. So when we do Bunny's apartment this season, it's much more informed by Dana's work already. She's already done all the homework for Bunny. And for us, it made it very easy to know, oh, yes, this is Bunny, this is not Bunny, this is Bunny, and this is not. And it was kind of great that way. And so when we showed her the boards of the wallpaper and the fabrics and all that stuff, she's like, yep, this is perfect. Don't sweat it.
Yeah.
It's great. Because all of her work had already been done. And so we were just taking her lead. It was great.
The details, right? It's so amazing to me when they have everything thought out the next season and probably the next season if it's still going.
And it's very specific.
It's very specific. And the way he was talking about how it's the teamwork when there's layers and it's just like it's the exterior of the actor. Like it's kind of everything else around. Think about where we are right now and things that surround us. That's part of who we are.
Yeah.
When we're in our own space.
And now I want to hear about everyone's apartment. What does the production design tell us about our main characters?
Oh, yeah. But I also, I want to get inside Bunny's apartment. I mean, there are answers about the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death. Are we aware of this? Remember, Kevin?
Yeah. I mean, so they said that we get to see inside of Bunny's apartment in season 2, which is, I don't know, pretty exciting.
I'm nervous and excited.
So, yeah, unfortunately, we don't know a whole lot about Bunny's apartment, but we will get to learn about the other characters like you wanted, KK.
Yes.
So we'll go through each of them one by one. But first, let's take a quick break.
Welcome back. Before the break, we talked about how the art department collaborates with the other parts of the production team. And now we're going to dive into our main characters to see what secrets about their lives were hidden inside their apartments at the Arconia.
Like a frozen cat leg?
Yes, exactly.
It's behind the couch.
Yummy.
Yeah, so the first one I asked about was Charles.
We had an initial version of Charles that was like straight out of the 90s that we had done. And it was like a groovy, bachelory, very Architectural Digest, New York City bachelor's apartment. And it just felt a little bit too dated and out of touch for this man. So we looked at this first version and then we changed some things. And in changing it, we actually addressed a lot of the things about the character that we did not know when we were having this meeting about, once we had thrown this idea up on the wall and then we crumpled it up and threw it away. And that is that, he's a smart investor. So he made his money and saved wisely, spent wisely. He's a shrewd art collector. There's some really nice pieces of art in his apartment. Nothing extravagant, nothing that he can retire with, but some pieces that are worth quite a bit.
Wait, did you guys notice that he was a wise investor of art, like capital A art? Did you see stuff? I remember his music. and he had a bunch of records and, all that. But I didn't really notice. Did you guys notice that?
I can't say I noticed the art specifically. I always liked his apartment the best. It was kind of clean and modern, but still comfortable. Beautiful. But I can't say I really noticed the art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely didn't notice either. Not that I know very much about art, it wouldn't necessarily be the first thing I would notice. But if you think about it, Charles definitely isn't very concerned with money
right.
in the show, not like Oliver is at least. And, his house is very put together. It's always clean, and it has sort of a classy sense to it, like he spent some money on the things in there. And when I was doing research for this interview, I learned a lot about the art on his walls. And we'll talk about that more in a minute with Curt and Rich. But one thing that Curt said is that we definitely know that Charles has good taste in furniture.
Ooh.
This comes from an early discussion with Steve. So some of the pieces are very specific manufacturers that he thought would be good for the character. And then overall, there's a playfulness to the apartment in the colors, in the materials, and all over it is just a lightness. There's a lightness to it and a playfulness. And we all agreed that was really important. And we had a couple of key images that we really liked that we were working off of and trying to get a certain vibe from.
So are there any things inside of Charles's apartment that you remember? I mean, KK, you said it was your favorite, but is there anything like any furniture or art or specific things?
I do remember there was a sign in the kitchen, and it was it said nice hot vegetables.
I know that one for sure. I think I talked about that.
We did talk about it because we thought it was a clue.
We thought everything was a clue. But yes, and we thought, and I love that it is playfulness. Like, I think it feels like maybe a little bit of Steve Martin persona in there, in the sense of his playfulness, and he's really his thought of beauty. I mean, it really is. I loved his apartment. I really did. I just didn't pay attention to the artwork except for the nice hot vegetables.
And that's a good reminder to eat your vegetables.
Yes, and remember Brady Bunch. Do you remember the Brady Bunch?
Yeah.
They had what was it? It was pork chop and applesauce. It wasn't.
They had a little chalkboard.
It was in chalk. Yeah, so that was not high art.
No,
but this is.
Well, actually, it is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there was some other kind of cool stuff that Curt pointed out too.
There's a collection of 4 album covers on his wall in the kitchen that are from some 1960s era percussion records. And these record covers are designed by Joseph Albers, the artist who did homage to the square, like the square and the square, like blocks that everyone's familiar with.
Are you guys familiar with Joseph Albers and homage to the square?
I was not familiar with it.
Yeah. Did you look it up? I mean, like,
yes, I looked it up.
You've
Fantastic.
probably seen them in a museum. Apparently he did hundreds of these. Like, it's a study on.
Yeah. And it's because
color.
It's about the colors. And I just love that.
It almost has like a 60s or a 70s kind of look to it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Like a Palm Springs kind of vibe.
For sure. Yeah. So I looked it up, and when I saw it, I was like,
yeah.
Yes,
oh, that's it.
Yes, of
that's
course.
it.
See, we're learning things.
So that's just like a little, it's a they're nice pieces. They're thoughtfully chosen for him, and they come out of a knowledge of art and music. We have a list of of Easter eggy stuff that we've thrown in there that's fun to think about with him.
A couple of things like character based that we looked at, wanted to sort of play with a bit. That first he was like very meticulous and very much about things being in order and place. And it's funny because they sort of picked up on that as the season went on. So everything about his space has its own place for it.
And this is really useful because there's so much contrast between the two characters. And, basically everything that Rich is talking about now is the opposite of Oliver. So it's it's an Oscar and Felix situation.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it was funny because like one of the things that we talked about first, and one of the things that really launched the look and feel of his apartment for us was the striped fabric on the sofa in the living room. And pretty much everything, like, because those choices are rather arbitrary in that design world, and I mean, they feel, they emotionally.
No design choice is arbitrary, Rich Murray.
Of course not. But because
there is not one arbitrary choice in any of the apartments. This has been a lovely interview.
Thanks for coming. I absolutely love you.
Murray.
Gosh,
You're breaking up. We're not.
How did we end up working together? No, what I meant was like the arbitrary in that there could have been any number of choices made to sort of be the launching point for Charles's character. That this was such a rigid, sort of exciting, colorful, and something very sophisticated for him was what I thought was, oh, this is great. And this says this character. Curt already mentioned the names of the pieces of furniture and all of that stuff. Like everything in there is essentially not a catalog. It's a custom piece, or it was a showroom piece that we tried to pull in. And that was important to him because everything has significance for Charles. And then in that same way, all of the art in his apartment, and Curt and Steve were very great about like leading this to make sure that all of the art meant something in his place. So like we have the main portrait of the woman walking away in the living room. Obviously, is very much a part of who this character is. There's a big piece of art in the hallway that you see from the kitchen that looks like nothing but like window mullions. So it's like looking out windows and peeping into other people's lives through these windows. There's like a Starsky and Hutch sort of like car that feels very much like a police car from the 80s in the family room. And we thought that was sort of like a wrap gift or something from one of his past seasons on Brazos.
And then there's the Ed Ruscha, which there's an Ed Ruscha that says nice hot vegetables.
Yeah, in the kitchen.
In the kitchen. We made up a whole story for that.
So there it is. The nice hot vegetables. Ed Ruscha. It's actually a famous artist and famous painting. Do you guys, or I'm curious what you think Charles's backstory would be for having a painting like that.
Well, we know it's not a clue.
It's definitely not a clue. I don't, what's a good backstory? Nice. Well, now he's doing his, he's cooking himself and he's putting a lot of vegetables in his omelet. But I feel like now he's cooking for himself. Like I said, nobody's cooking with him, for him.
Right. Well, what I was thinking, since we know it's not a clue, maybe it had something to do with Lucy, Charles's girlfriend's daughter. And maybe that was something they would cook together, and that's a sign they found at a flea market.
The omelet is
on a Sunday.
Vegetables in the
maybe it's tied to that.
I think we're right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's definitely not an art piece you would find at a flea market. Yeah. I think it's an expensive art piece, but I think that you guys will like the story that the art department came up with. Why Charles has it.
So it's very expensive, like now, but we made up a story that while he was shooting Brazos in whatever year, he was in LA at some point working on the show. He went to a party. He met Ed Ruscha, went to the studio. They became pals. He bought a piece and it's in his kitchen now. It's now worth, several $100,000. But back then it wasn't. Mm-hmm. But he's smart and he's shrewd, and he got the piece for a lark from someone he had met at an LA party.
That's a better story.
That definitely is better than the omelet story, KK.
I like that they bring Brazos back into it.
Brazos. I was going to say, what did he do with his residual checks?
Yeah.
Not the ones today that are a penny, but I'm talking about the ones back then that were a few hundies.
Apparently he bought some art.
He did buy some art, and he's shrewd, and he did that.
Good investment.
Good for him.
There are only so many spots in the apartment to put art. So each one is an opportunity to tell something else about the character, and we take full advantage of it every single time.
Something else about Steve's, and maybe this is a little sort of tidbit on Easter eggs. In the first episode, I think, there's a flashback this year of Charles Hayden and his father in the 1950s out in the street, across the street from the Arconia. And there's and it's a wintry scene, and there's a vegetable and fruit seller, a vendor on the street. And we hand painted a sign saying nice cold vegetables for that street vendor. And it's deep background all the way down the block. You never know if you're ever going to see it. But it was kind of funny because we painted it with like the same oranges and greens and, in the same, but it was all, but it feels part of that fruit vendor. In that everything else there was orange and green and brown as well.
Is that the sound of Curt laughing in the background? Are we getting rooked again? Is this not real?
No. Curt is laughing because he actually thought that was hilarious. And it was the first time he heard about it since he's not on season 2. So he thought that was very funny. But he did go on to add this.
I like to say that scenery is not funny. It shouldn't be funny, but there can be humor in the work, and you can hide some things that are funny, but you want to be careful that it doesn't take the audience out of the reality of what the characters are doing. So it has to be done with a very light touch.
I could even see working that into his backstory. Maybe that's why he was drawn to that image in the studio when he met him the first time.
You just made that up naturally. You just made that up with us. Exactly. That's exactly where it came from.
Yeah.
It just eventually it feeds itself, and the decisions become very easy to make because they make sense, because you get to know the characters well enough, and then you're creating all these stories around them.
It sounds like every piece has a story, and it was very specific. And we're learning all of these things that we never would have put together.
That's what we were just talking about a little while ago. It's just so amazing. I think we were so fixated on
trying to find clues,
but instead of that, just enjoy you know what we're going to do this season? We are going to look at things in a different light, but we're going to still look for the clues. But we're going to see them in a different way, in the details and in the beauty of each character.
We should write this down.
Oh, you're writing it down. I don't write anything down.
Sounds like a New Year's resolution.
It does.
New season.
But I also wonder what else is lurking there that we just don't know yet.
Yes, this is so exciting.
Yeah, well, and, who knows? Maybe that is, relevant to the way that Charles acts, I don't know.
I don't know either. I think I act like I know, but I don't.
That's true.
So that's it for Charles. Let's take another quick break, and then when we get back, we'll go into Oliver's maximalist apartment and find out what that tells us about his past.
Welcome back. So we just spent some time learning about Charles and how his past is reflected in his living space.
And now, I think let's talk about the one and only Oliver Putnam.
OP.
There's nothing really in Oliver's. We didn't do much.
Yeah, it's very minimalist for sure.
First,
I don't know. There's not much. He doesn't have a house.
He doesn't have a housekeeper. He does not have a housekeeper.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was a decision we made, right? Charles Hayden has a housekeeper, and she's there twice a week, or he's there twice a week. Oliver doesn't have a housekeeper. We are flashing back to Oliver in the 90s, where he does have a housekeeper in the second season, which is kind of funny because it's completely throwing our minds exactly in the wrong way for Oliver, right?
Oh, so you got to clean up Oliver's?
Yeah, who is this guy when he looks like Charles? But Oliver, everything there was like, right, Curt? I mean, it was all about the theatricality of it. It was his career, it was his life.
Yeah, that was actually the word that we used in choosing everything for Oliver's. If it wasn't theatrical, it didn't stay. It was gone immediately.
He's got a stage in his living room, right?
He's got a stage in his living room. So that was one of the first things we did in the design, was propose that there would be a stage in there, a place for, late night salons with actors and directors and other artists to come and hang out at the house. And you can just imagine these, booze infused parties and there's grand piano, and inevitably someone's going to wind up on the stage singing some show tunes, and that's going to go on pretty late at night. He's not going to make a lot of friends on that floor, which is probably another problem that he's dealing with in the building. It's probably why Bunny had it in for him. So the stage was important. That was the first thing we came up with. And then everything else sort of came out from there in the ground plan. And then we just decorated I say we, but it's Rich and his crew just decorated the crap out of it. And every time I walked in there, there was more and more and more. And I started looking at the books and like, where did all these books come from? And Rich is like, oh, they're mine. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh no, they're mine. I brought them from my storage, and it's all my theater books from theater school. I was like, no
and Curt and I got out of graduate school around the same time, and he still had all of his models from sets that he built in grad school. So he shipped those in.
Oh, wow.
And we put those models into the study area. So it was a very easy sort of collaborative. I'm like, oh God, I don't have any models left. I threw them all out when I was a kid.
But I was an idiot and kept mine and they've been sitting in storage, and I'm so happy that they're gone from my life, and now they're part of television history.
Another part of television history. Exactly. Yeah. Like, I lost my Riverside Shakespeare. Oh, well, never going to read that again.
This is so funny because Kevin and I were just talking about, I finally cleared out a closet and I had about 150 plays.
From Samuel French,
which is a bookstore that has so 150 plays, whether they were, it was amazing. And I literally just gave them, I tried to get them back to Samuel French and then a school or anything, and nobody, and I gave them to Goodwill. But I really tried to, it's so funny that we're talking about, but I purged and it feels good.
Yeah. If only there had been a show with like a playwright that you could have stocked.
I could have stocked and given,
I think it would be easier to do some spring cleaning if you were giving your stuff to a TV show where you could kind of visit it again, because you could just put on Hulu and see all your stuff again.
Yeah,
and you don't have to pay for a storage unit.
10 years later.
Yeah, I think also if you have, really cool stuff, that would lend itself really well to somebody really theatrical, like Oliver. I don't know. Do you guys remember when we talked to Jess Rosenthal, the producer, during season 1? He told us about Oliver's dining room that looked like an Italian opera house.
Yeah. That really paints a picture. You get it.
You get it. And then, and All the World's a Stage. He put a little stage. It's literally, I think you can see the stage from his table. Yeah. So you can do anything with any of that stuff. So it, really painted a picture for Oliver.
So because Jess brought it up, I asked Rich and Curt about it, and they had another really cool backstory for that one.
This was, once again, another story that we invented ourselves and took to John, and it became a backstory that, just had life. So the story of the wallpaper is that we imagine that Oliver's father might have been an opera director, and that Oliver was the black sheep of the family going into theater. Oh no. So he went into musical theater and Broadway, and that was looked down upon, but he still loved the opera.
So let me pull up this dining room to refresh your memory.
Oliver's dining room?
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty beautiful. I mean, there's a lot of...
it's very ornate.
It's very ornate. I think that he is gauche.
It looks like when you're going on a tour of like an opera house in Europe, and this is exactly what you would imagine.
That's his homage to his daddy.
And this is his dining room.
And this is his dining room.
Yeah, and it's also, you remember where he pitches Splash the Musical?
Yes.
Yes. The ill-fated.
Everything's a splash. He just the ill-fated.
Very theatrical.
Yes.
Definitely. And they actually painted each of those scenes like one by one. Curt says they had the art department make the wallpaper from scenes of the opera, so that when he was pitching, like we saw him pitch Splash the Musical, it was like he was on a stage performing. And it was actual Met opera painters who painted the drapery in the center of the room too, because apparently the opera was not happening because it was COVID. So.
It was COVID. There wasn't anything happening.
So they basically created their own wallpaper.
Wow.
Yeah, they did that a lot in a lot of the place, but that specifically I thought was pretty cool.
Details, KK, details. And none of them were clues.
I mean, yeah.
Not yet.
Maybe not for the murder, but...
And then Rich found what was the little thing at the end of the room that you found?
It was 10,000 pounds of marble. What's so funny about the whole series is you don't see it, I don't think, at all. in the entire first season. And it is just the most gloriously European carved marble mantelpiece that is like 10 feet wide, 10,000 pounds, and was just stupid. And and I looked at it like, of course, this is the answer.
Yeah, it's the answer until you bring it on the set and we have to reinforce the stage underneath it.
Try storing it over a summer and reinstalling it.
So they had to put 10,000 pounds of marble away for the summer and take it back out again for season 2. I mean, it's not like a public storage kind of thing, right? It's not like,
no,
let's
they
go put it in.
They literally, I don't know if they use a crane. I don't really know what 10,000 pounds feels like.
Get that U-Haul.
Just throw a tarp over it and wish for the best.
Yeah.
This is amazing how this is now the second, I'm sure there's many, many more, but the second one they were talking about with the doggy, all the doggy closet thing that wasn't seen in the first season 2. All the thought process that we're going to hopefully see in the second.
Still lurking.
Wow.
Still lurking.
Yeah, well, apparently you get to see the marble a bit in season 2. And Rich also says now they're thinking about making like a vacuum form or plastic sculpted version of it to make it easier to move on the crew.
Finally, they listened to me.
Yeah. But it's not just in the dining room that opera theme is present. It's actually kind of throughout the entire apartment.
There's a chair that I found at an auction that was from the original Metropolitan Opera House from 1930s. And that sits right next to the piano in the living room. There's a scrap of architectural salvage that hangs above his bar that was from the original Opera House. And then just everything we did was about the show in there, including even like the sheet music on the piano is often the Duke Ellington version of Solitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about the character. I mean, it's really sort of sad.
Oliver is responsible for so much comedic relief. It's easy to forget about his loneliness and solitude, and he's probably eating lean cuisines for one.
Yeah, but do you remember? I mean, listen, it's all about like clowns laughing on the inside, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's all. I mean, there really is. Comedy comes from tragedy a lot of times, and that's the truth of it, though. That's why it's really hard to do comedy at times. It really is.
Dying's easy, comedy's hard. That's what they say.
Big time.
Yeah, and I think it's cool kind of that, all of his triumphs and his failures are on display in his apartment, with all the show posters and that sort of thing. And Curt says that they had a lot of fun coming up with the titles and the posters for those.
This is a parlor game between Rich and John, coming up with names for these ridiculous plays that went up on the walls. The list was long, and it kept going back and forth between the two of them, and eventually we kept whittling it down.
What were some of your favorites?
Rich, you remember?
Newark, I think, was the favorite.
Yeah, that's why we did that one really big. Newark was amazing.
I think I actually remember seeing that one.
I definitely remember that one too.
Yeah, I remember that one, and then there's some other
Newark.
Yeah, what was the other? Well, obviously the main one, Splash the musical. Or Splat. Was it Splat?
It was Splash, but the critics called it Splat.
I was like, wait a minute, where was I? Yeah.
I saw that they put a couple of them onto the Only Murders Instagram that I can show you. We've got this one, Splash the musical.
Splash. And that's a big one too.
Honestly.
So good.
This one?
Everyone can whistle in the rain. That seems like a knockoff of something.
I remember. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I remember the visual of that.
There's Newark.
Yes, remember that one.
And then this one.
Oh, I didn't even see that. That's
A
great.
doll's house.
That's
and
beautiful
it's
too.
Woman in a very small house.
Yeah. I actually don't get the reference on that one. Do you guys get the reference?
A doll's house?
Yeah.
Just a big person in a little house. I don't know.
Ibsen?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I see. So he did Ibsen, but he made this really silly.
A doll's house.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Exactly.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah.
A woman in a very small dollhouse.
Yeah.
Literally.
They missed the point, I guess, because I did read that play actually.
So his place is full of all of those little insider jokes, and like the rest of the art in his space is all stuff he stole from a set, stuff that his wife liked, and he's when they were still married, and he just stole from a set. None of it's of any significance really, It's all the other little stuff around the house that are, he also, one of the little things that we have there in Oliver's is that he's sort of scattered and he's sort of impulsive. So like on every table or every little ledge in the house, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 empty teacups because he drops his tea to go answer the door, and he drops his tea to go, oh, I just thought of something, and he runs to the piano, And so there's all those little bits of things where it's just a mess really in his house, but if you look at it even closer, it's really just a dirty tea bag sitting in a different teacup.
And that I walked onto the set. It was, in the hours before we were going to shoot it, and I'm walking around. I'm like, what is up with all the teacups? I'm like, I walk up to Rich. I'm like, what is going on with the teacups? And he's like, well, here's the story with the teacups. I was like, of course. It makes all the sense.
And Marty walked in and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. When you have that sort of freedom to collaborate and play like this, it's just magical. It's the most fun ever, and we're doing it this season too, Curt, without you, sadly. I see the tears. But we're doing this, it's the same thing this season as well. We're having a blast. And like when you think of bunnies, what do bunnies do? That's that's where we're going with, Bunny's apartment. Who is Bunny? Who is this character? And that's it.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough.
Oh no, come on. What do bunnies do?
What do bunnies do?
Well,
jumping
and
sex.
Yeah, sex.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell when he said that if he was giving away a clue
and he was trying to shush him up,
and he was trying to shush him, or if he was like clutching his pearls and going like, about the sex thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was. I don't know. I choose to believe there's a clue in there, but he didn't give it to us. So
yeah. I don't know. But are you guys ready to learn about Mabel and what her apartment tells us about her now?
Definitely. I'm very curious about Mabel's apartment.
What do you think you know about Mabel based on where she lives?
You mean blame? I think, it's
well, first of all, it's her aunt's apartment.
It's her aunt's apartment. It's very industrial. Let's put it that way.
She made a choice.
She made a choice to not do a thing. So I don't know. It's
it's being renovated.
It's being renovated, but it's a bit. She seems to me like she covers her loneliness too, and I see it in there. If she doesn't want anything done to it. Maybe she acts like she's got it all together, but then maybe she feels like she doesn't deserve to fix it up. I don't know. I think she's got some depth to her.
And a very slow renovator.
Yeah, here's what Curt said about it.
I mean, the most basic way to think of Mabel's is that it is what she is, which is a work in progress, simply. And this renovation project that was stopped at some point, she hasn't done anything since she's walked in, and we just wanted it to be beautiful in a ruinous kind of way. And I think it is. And we found this piece of reference with this wall that had been removed down to the studs, and it's great. It gives instant depth from every angle, and it really worked out nicely. So there are some details in her place that you have to look a little bit harder for, that show a little bit of history in that apartment. That there's an 80s, 90s layer to it. There's the mural work that she's doing, which is really important. There's a lot of like trash and stuff from the renovation project that people kept cleaning up, which drove me insane because it's all dressing and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we need to move this stuff. We got to get this out of here. No,
the dumpster belongs right there. I put it there.
It belongs there. I kept moving it to the same place. Why are you putting trash in the dumpster? Of course you're putting trash on the dumpster. You think it's a dumpster. It's not. It's set decoration. So that was a challenge. And then when we finally shot it, I was like, what is that roll of paper doing there? And someone had the same thing, the opposite thing happened where people were putting down construction things to do projects in there, getting in the days leading up. But then no one cleaned it up because I was being so specific about not cleaning up in there. So there's some things in there that don't really belong there, but they became a fact once it had been shot. So careful what you wish for.
But that's funny that people were actually leaving extra stuff. They're like, who left 10,000 pounds of marble on Mabel's couch?
What's happening here?
I mean, you definitely notice if there was 10,000 pounds of marble in Mabel's apartment because, there's just not a lot of stuff in there. No. She hasn't lived there nearly as long as Oliver and Charles. And, as you said, it's not even really her apartment. It belongs to her aunt. And I think, when I think about Mabel's apartment, I think the most prominent piece of furniture I think of is that really old sofa, if you recall.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The sofa was and that was one of the first pieces of research that John sent us, was the sofa for Mabel's. He just wanted a really cool, classy, vintage, old thing that to anyone else looks like it just came out of a dumpster or out of an alley. And to us was the most important or most expensive piece of furniture we bought last season, which is weird, right?
Yeah, that crappy sofa in Mabel's is like $1,000 sofa.
It's
like,
real.
Yeah.
It's real. It's in excellent condition. It's 45 years old. It's glorious. Yeah. It never lived in a fraternity house. Which is good.
Wait, how many $1,000 for the couch?
Yeah, we couldn't make it out in his audio when we were listening back. So we emailed him and asked him, and he said $14,000 for that sofa.
That's all my furniture.
Does Mabel even have a job? Like, have we established how she makes money?
Yeah, and is it her couch or was it her aunt's couch? Yeah.
I mean,
and is everything else in storage?
These are all really good questions. I think based on first of all, does she have a job? I have no idea. I would love to know. But based on what Rich said, I think it's safe to say that the sofa belonged to her aunt.
That makes sense.
I look back on it now and I'm like, oh yeah. I see the world where that sofa and those chandeliers and those curtains live. And then her aunt, I don't think has renovated recently. And it's sort of run down. Although she has the money and the wherewithal to redo it. That's why Mabel's there. That's why she's there. Yeah. So it's a perfect sort of like blank slate for Mabel, and yet all of this rich texture and interesting, intricate detail all at once.
It's a very good expression of the original world of the Arconia architecture too, where Steve's has been heavily renovated. Marty's has been done in a gentleman's lounge style. This one is probably the closest to the original layout and style of the architecture of the Arconia. I say it like it's a real place.
I might as well be at this point.
It exists now on Google Maps. Have you seen that? You can search for the Arconia on Google Maps and it comes up.
I did not know that. We should go look it up right now.
Oh, you got a good
Shall
thought.
we?
Yes.
It's right next door to a CVS pharmacy. And actually, if you look at the street view, that's definitely
Oh, that's definitely it because that's the courtyard and the archway.
Yeah, look at that.
So this is the exterior of the Arconia. They said they shot some of the lobby scenes there, and also, the episode where the Hardy Boys break into one of the apartments.
Right.
Apparently, that apartment is in the real building.
Ooh.
And then I think they probably did the apartments on a stage where they could just
The rest
have
of it, yeah.
full
That's
access
very
all the
cool,
time.
doing the exteriors and the Hardy Boys thing. That's great.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool to learn, all kinds of how all this information is hidden inside of the production design for Charles and Oliver and Mabel. So obviously that begs the question, what about Jan?
Oh,
bassoonist.
Jan. Oh, the sexy bassoonist.
That one had to be done pretty much down the middle in order to keep it as a secret. So initially, her foyer is kind of hiding what's within. So we tried to make that look kind of safe and pretty and nothing like the horror that she is. We had to try to trick the audience with that one. But Rich, you may continue.
This is hysterical because when we get to the end, when Oliver and Mabel break into her apartment and into her bathroom, and they find her kit full of poisons, we found a wallpaper that was called Nightshade, and it's all poisonous plants, and it's all like Alice in Wonderland, and that was her bathroom wallpaper. It was this like poison potion plant growing vine craziness, and then it also had like, you know, alarm clocks and candy canes and stuff. It was totally a whacked out Alice in Wonderland poison world. And we're like, this is, of course, her bathroom.
I want to go back and watch that episode now because I want to get a better look at this. But don't you think that would be fun to have that wallpaper in your bathroom?
Yes.
And see if people start commenting on it? Because then you have a whole story.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recognize poisonous plants on a wallpaper, you know? And if I did, that would say something kind of weird about me.
It probably would.
So I did try to get some information about season 2 out of them.
Good try, Maggie. God.
How did this go?
Do you want to hear what Rich said?
Yes.
Okay.
Last thing is, I know, Curt, you're not on season 2, but Rich, maybe you can tell us anything you can tell us about season 2. I guess we've learned that we're going to see Bunny's apartment. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, spoiler alert, Bunny's dead. So we get to see her space. And of course, like Tim Kono's last season, it is featured pretty heavily. And that was such a joy to do, because like you'd think you know who Bunny is, and until you sit down and try to pick her wallpapers. And she's also the sort of meticulous, detailed, focused, you know, she always holds the grudge and she always remembers every little note. So we had to work all of that into Bunny's this season.
So, you know, big takeaway here is I think that Bunny is a lot more complex than we ever may have realized during season 1.
Okay, Maggie, that's reaching. But yes, I mean, yes, absolutely. But
aren't you dying to see Bunny's apartment,
more.
though? Well, how do you picture her apartment? I see a couch that has those plastic covers on it.
Oh, yeah.
I see a glass crystal candy dish with hard candies that are still like stuck together.
You are reminding me of the 70s.
So you really see Bunny as an old lady, like a classic old
That's
lady.
how I picture her apartment.
So do you feel like you learned anything new about Charles or Oliver or Mabel based on, you know, what Curt and Rich told us?
Really, if I look at them now, I really can see the frenetic of the one and the calm of the other, the way this actor was more, you know, serene and when in his television, and he was all out there with his stage. It just really shows the differences of the two.
And at Oliver's, he had so much stuff like the teacups and the dog closet and everything else that there's so much stuff that you almost don't notice the loneliness.
Yeah.
And getting back to it again, it's almost like he's surrounding himself with things so he's not so alone.
Right.
He's around like his friends.
Yeah.
He finds comfort in that.
He finds comfort. And you look at that table, that was a big table, right? So he used to have big dinner parties. And now he's just table
Plain
for
cuisine.
one.
For one.
For one.
Yeah, that's true. I also feel like we still really don't know very much about Mabel, except, you know, that she's a work in progress. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, like, does that make her suspicious?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know what she does. What does she do for work? Where is she going?
She was left money, even though, her aunt's still around, right? But given her money, maybe she has some sort of, you know.
Yeah,
unless
where
she's
is
dead.
her aunt?
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, ooh, I don't know. I'm still going to call her Blame. So let's start from there.
Thanks for listening to this very special bonus episode of Only Murders in the Pod. Keep sending your thoughts and theories to us at onlymurders@strawhutmedia.com. As we continue waiting for season 2, we'll be releasing more bonus content. Take a minute to subscribe, rate, follow, review if you like the show.
Only Murders in the Pod is a production of Straw Hut Media, hosted by me, Elizabeth Keener, and Kevin Lawn.
Me.
Produced by Ryan Tillotson, Maggie Boles, and William Sterling. Associate producer is Stephen Markley. Original music by Kyle Merritt. Only Murders in the Building original score music by Siddhartha Khosla. And big thanks to John Hoffman, Ari Abishay, and the entire Hulu team.